A reticent girl has gynecological surgery. Surprisingly, her physician is a youthful millionaire who becomes profoundly enamored with her. The atmosphere in the waiting area was dense, laden with a subtle odor of antiseptic and subdued whispers. Emily Harper occupied the corner, her hands tightly clasped in her lap, thumbs incessantly stroking against one another in a nervous cadence. Her legs trembled instinctively, the anxiety surging in overwhelming waves. She had procrastinated on this for years. Her gynecological conditions had deteriorated. Despite the persistent discomfort that had become her new norm, the prospect of allowing anyone, particularly a man, to approach her again was intolerable. However, her physician had insisted. "This can no longer be disregarded," she stated, her tone simultaneously compassionate and resolute. Emily was confident that she had specified a female physician while scheduling the appointment. She meticulously verified the item on the web form 3 times, recalling it distinctly. When the nurse announced her name and stated, "You will be with Dr. Adrian West today," her heart raced against her ribs. "Wait," she stated, rising suddenly. "Is he a male?" The nurse blinked. "Indeed, Drive West is among our premier gynecologists. Is there an issue?" Emily retreated slightly, her throat constricting. "I believed I was appointed with a female physician." The nurse offered a courteous yet contrite grin. "I apologize for any potential scheduling alteration. Nevertheless, I assure you, Dr. West exhibits exceptional professionalism. He has assisted several women who entered with similar apprehension as you. You are in capable hands." Emily stopped, conflicted between trepidation and urgency. Her abdomen pulsed softly, a harsh reminder of her need for assistance. Nevertheless, every instinct urged her to flee. She glanced at the closed examination room door and then back at the nurse. "I dislike being touched," she said faintly. "I comprehend," the nurse replied gently. "You may terminate the examination at any moment. No action will occur without your approval." Emily's heart raced as she nodded rigidly, trailing the nurse down the corridor. Each step felt like a progression toward a recollection she had endeavored to suppress for years. Within the room, she donned the medical gown, the fabric chilling against her skin. She perched on the edge of the examination table, her arms tightly encircling herself, inhaling slowly and shallowly. A gentle knock resonated. "Miss Harper, may I enter?" She remained silent, fixated on the wall. The door creaked ajar. Dr. Adrian West entered, clutching a clipboard. His presence permeated the room, not in a menacing manner, but with a tranquil, stabilizing effect. He was tall and slender, possessing kind hazel eyes and a voice as smooth as placid water. "Hello, Emily," he began softly, placing the clipboard down. "I am Drive West. I acknowledge there was some misunderstanding over today's appointment. If you feel uncomfortable for any reason, we can reschedule or terminate at any time. You possess complete authority here." Emily averted her gaze. "Just proceed," she whispered. Adrian acknowledged her demeanor without taking offense. "Very well, I will articulate each action I undertake prior to executing it, understood?" She offered a subtle nod. He commenced with fundamental inquiries, maintaining a tone that was both light-hearted and respectful. She responded softly, her hands nervously manipulating the hem of her gown. When the physical examination commenced, he articulated each step in precise, professional language. "I will now examine your lower abdomen," he stated. "Please inform me immediately if you experience any pain or discomfort." He applied gentle pressure, beginning from the peripheral regions. She was taut beneath his fingers, every muscle stiff. As he approached the pelvic area, his hand, remaining outside the gown, inadvertently grazed her inner thigh. Something within her fractured. Her eyes widened. Her breath halted. "Do not touch me." She forcefully pushed his hand away, recoiling so abruptly that the stirrups clashed against the metal table. Adrian quickly retreated, her hands raised in astonishment. Emily hastily dismounted the table, clutching the robe securely to her body, her eyes brimming with tears, wide with rage and distress. "Are you aware of the consequences of your actions?" she exclaimed, Do you believe that wearing that coat grants you the right to touch women at your discretion? Wait, Emily, I began, but she was already retreating toward the door. Do not speak to me. Do not pursue me. Maintain your distance. She abruptly opened the door, tears cascading down her face, and fled barefoot down the corridor. The nurse attempted to call after her, but Emily had vanished before anyone could respond. Adrian remained in shocked silence, his expression a blend of worry and bewilderment. With his hands still partially elevated, he gradually lowered them, his mind in turmoil. He was oblivious to the events that had transpired, yet he sensed their impact. This situation transcended his personal concerns. A profound disturbance had been ignited in that room, leaving an unhealed scar. Emily forcefully closed the door, her chest rising and falling as if she had fled from a tempest. Her coat fell from her shoulders, neglected as she collapsed to the floor, her back against the door. Her arms encircled her body, attempting to maintain composure. Tears flowed rapidly, fervently, and uncontrollably. She had believed she could manage the situation, convinced that time had mitigated her anguish. However, a single inadvertent clinical contact had precipitated her descent. The panic, the shame, the recollections surged forth. She was once again 15 years old. Awkward and reticent, her physique commenced transforming in ways she could not comprehend. It was a customary school health assessment. Her peers jested and mocked one another while awaiting their turns. Upon hearing her name, she entered a modestly partitioned room where a middle-aged male physician awaited with a broad smile. Initially, the examination involved standard blood pressure and reflex tests, but subsequently, his hands lingered. He remarked on her progress and indicated the necessity to verify something regarding her future health. She recalled the sensation of his fingers grazing her chest, his proximity, and his breath laden with coffee and mint. Paralyzed by confusion, she was uncertain of how to respond until she fled. She confided in her teacher, the nurse, and even her mother. None of them believed her. "Emily, are you once again embellishing the truth?" Her mother sighed. "He has been visiting for years," the nurse stated. "He is entirely professional. The children were more cruel. She merely seeks attention." She likely misinterpreted the situation. What a melodramatic individual. Emily realized then that, at times, the truth is inconsequential if no one is willing to acknowledge it. She ceased to voice her thoughts, discontinued attending sleepovers, and relinquished her trust. Her existence diminished until silence became her sole refuge. Even a decade later, that silence adhered to her like a second skin. She rose from the floor and staggered into the bathroom, dousing her face with cold water. Her reflection gazed back, aged yet not fortified. She despised her lingering tremors, the disquieting sensation of her skin, and her misplaced trust in the system, which had led to her subsequent disillusionment. Adrian had not intended to cause harm. She understood that, yet her body remained indifferent, retaining the memory. Enveloped in a blanket on her couch, she gazed at the overcast sky. The dull ache in her abdomen throbbed, a subtle reminder that fear would not alleviate her suffering. She required assistance, yet how could she solicit it without compromising her identity once more? 3 days elapsed. She reported illness on the first day, again on the second, but on the third morning, an inexplicable force drew her back to the bookstore, her diminutive refuge of antiquated pages and tranquil moments. The bell above the door resonated as she entered. Sunlight illuminated the dusty windows, warming the well-known shelves. She prepared peppermint tea and activated the soft jazz playlist. By mid-morning, the shop resumed its typical cadence, with customers browsing and engaging in occasional conversation, accompanied by the sound of turning pages. Emily remained solitary, replenishing bookmarks behind the counter. Then, the bell chimed once more. "Excuse me," a voice called out, calm and familiar. She halted abruptly, not needing to turn to identify the speaker. Dr. Adrian West stood in the middle of the store, clutching a small notebook. His expression conveyed surprise, bordering on apology. He was dressed in jeans and a navy coat, devoid of a white coat or stethoscope, merely a man caught off guard by her presence. "Emily," he stated cautiously, "I was unaware that you were employed here." She blinked, her heart racing. "Are you tracking my movements?" "No, I assure you." I was oblivious. "My mother adores antiquarian literature. She is recuperating from surgery. I believe this establishment might possess something suitable for her." She averted her gaze, clutching the counter. "I merely intended to express," he advanced cautiously. "I apologize for the incident at the clinic. It was never my intention to cause you discomfort. If my actions were inappropriate, you were not at fault." She interjected abruptly. He hesitated. Emily's tone was frigid. "I recognize your intentions were not malicious, yet that does not alter my feelings." He nodded. "I comprehend. Truly, I do." A moment of silence ensued. The store abruptly seemed constricted. "I merely wished to express my remorse," he persisted. "Not in my capacity as a physician, but as an individual. You were undeserving of feeling threatened." At last, she regarded him. Not as the physician, but as a man. He appeared neither refined nor defensive. He appeared weary. Human. "I do not require a physician's sympathy," she stated bluntly. His gaze softened. "I am not extending sympathy. I am extending empathy." Emily dismissed him with a shake of her head and proceeded to the rear shelves. "You lack knowledge of my circumstances." "Perhaps," he responded softly. "However, that does not imply a lack of concern." She hesitated briefly before vanishing into the back room. Upon her return, he had departed. 3 days later, Emily traversed the park during her lunch break, a cup of coffee warming her hands. The brisk air conveyed the aroma of fallen leaves as autumn adorned the ground in hues of gold and red. The park, situated merely a block from the bookstore, served as a tranquil refuge she frequently sought when her thoughts became overwhelming. She positioned herself on her customary bench by the pond, allowing her breathing to decelerate. However, prior to achieving relaxation, a startled exclamation captured her focus. Across the pathway, an elderly woman had stumbled over a fractured segment of the sidewalk. Papers and books cascaded from her bag as she endeavored to rise. Before Emily could react, another individual reached the woman first, Adrian. He knelt beside her, composed and gentle, examining her leg while offering soft reassurances. Subsequently, he made a call, presumably to a family member, and gathered her belongings, meticulously removing dirt from her coat. Emily observed from behind a tree unnoticed. He was not in scrubs or on duty, yet every action was deliberate, compassionate, and instinctive. The woman grasped his hand appreciatively, murmuring something that elicited a smile from him. He assisted her to a bench and draped his jacket over her shoulders. Emily's heart constricted. She recalled his calm demeanor at the clinic, his compassion despite her outburst. Observing him with this unfamiliar woman, gentle, attentive, humane, something within her softened. Perhaps she had been excessively severe. Not every man in a white coat was identical. She remained on her bench until the woman's daughter arrived, and Adrian offered a final wave before vanishing down the path, hands concealed in his pockets. Emily refrained from calling out, yet the image of him kneeling in the dirt, without a jacket in the cold, lingered with her long after his departure. That evening, the bookstore closed later than customary. Emily remained to organize a donation of vintage poetry books, becoming oblivious to the passage of time. When she finally secured the premises, the streets were tranquil. Noticing her phone battery was low, she tightened her scarf and opted for the alley shortcut home. Although she typically eschewed this route, the night was rapidly becoming colder. The alley appeared more shadowy than she recalled. Her boots resonated sharply against the pavement, and an unsettling sensation crept up her spine. Footsteps mirrored her rhythm, steady and deliberate. She turned her head. A man clad in a dark hoodie trailed her, hands in pockets, eyes locked onto her. Her breath hitched. She quickened her pace. He did as well. She rounded a corner. The street before her was devoid of activity. She struggled to retrieve her phone, but her trembling fingers hindered her ability to unlock it. "Hey," the man called out. She disregarded him. "I said, hey," he reiterated, his voice now elevated. She fled. He seized her arm. "Do not run from me, sweetheart." Panic surged within her. She screamed, writhing free, her bag striking the ground. He extended his arm once more, then headlights pierced the darkness. A vehicle halted abruptly. "Hey," a voice bellowed. "Andreen." He exited the vehicle and sprinted towards them. In a single, fluid motion, he pushed the man away, positioning himself between them with clenched fists. "Depart immediately." The man retreated, mumbling curses before vanishing into the darkness. Emily fell to her knees, shaking uncontrollably. Adrian knelt beside her, composed and reassuring. "Emily, are you injured?" She was unable to respond. Her hands gripped her coat tightly. He tenderly swept hair from her face. "You are safe now. I will protect you." She locked eyes with him, resolute and earnest, and offered a slight nod. He assisted her to her feet, collected her belongings, and ushered her into the passenger seat of his vehicle. She did not protest. He presented her with a bottle of water. "Sip this slowly," he instructed. She complied, and her trembling diminished somewhat. "I was returning home from the hospital," Adrian murmured. "I took a detour." "I'm so grateful I did." She eventually found her voice. "Thank you. You need not thank me," he responded. "I merely regret that occurred." The journey continued in silence. Upon arriving at her apartment, he insisted on accompanying her upstairs. Once inside, she collapsed onto the couch as he knelt before her, delicately tending to a scrape on her hand. "It's not deep," he whispered, "but it may sting." She remained unperturbed. The knowledge dawned upon her. He was making contact with her skin. She experienced no fear, no terror, no disgust, only tranquility. "You excel at this," she said. He looked up with a smile. "Temporary repairs or timely appearances?" She exhibited a smile, subtle yet genuine. However, he proposed to remain until you succumbed to slumber, and he fulfilled that promise. He occupied the armchair across the room, reading silently as she reclined beneath a blanket. For the first time in years, her body permitted itself to rest. Prior to succumbing to slumber, she gazed at him one final time. For years, terror had delineated her existence. However, this evening, an individual had intervened. To refrain from causing harm, to avoid attempting to rectify, but rather to provide presence. That altered everything. The following morning, she messaged him. "Thank you once more, Emily, for last night. Adrian, at any moment." Consistently. Subsequently, they started communicating by SMS with greater frequency. Occasionally pertaining to literature, occasionally concerning existence. Nothing overly intimate, yet sufficient to occupy her thoughts of him. For the first time in an extended period, Emily no longer felt isolated. The subsequent week introduced an unforeseen cold in both the atmosphere and Emily's life. Upon her recent arrival at the bookstore, she was arranging the window display when her colleague Sarah summoned her from the front desk. "Hello, Emily, you may wish to review this." Emily approached, removing dust from her hands. A local morning news piece was being broadcast on the store's little television. Today on Spotlight on Changemakers, the anchor announced that we are featuring one of the youngest and most accomplished medical professionals in the state, DR. Adrian West, successor to the West Medical Foundation and leader of their women's health branch, Emily Froh. A photograph of Adrian, smiling in scrubs and positioned outside a hospital, showed on the screen. His name was prominently displayed in bold at the bottom. Dr. Adrian West, medical director and benefactor. The report presented photographs of state-of-the-art facilities, philanthropic activities, and innovative research financed by the West family. Adrian was depicted delivering presentations at conferences, conferring with international health professionals, and engaging in handshakes with politicians. Emily's fingers grasped the edge of the counter. "West Medical?" Sarah inquired, arching her eyebrow. Isn't that a billion-dollar foundation? Emily remained silent. She was unable to. Later that evening, she sat solitary in her apartment, laptop open, gazing over article after article concerning the West medical dynasty. Adrian was not merely an accomplished physician. He was Adrian West, the sole progeny of Gregory West, a prominent player in the healthcare sector. She perused images of opulent gatherings, charitable fundraisers at estates, and gala appearances. In each instance, Adrian appeared impeccably composed, dignified, and entirely unattainable. It was illogical. He operated a modest vehicle, donned unadorned attire, and assisted an elderly woman in the park discreetly. He did not comport himself as one born into affluence, yet it did not prevent the knot from growing in her stomach. It included everything: his benevolence and attentiveness. Even on the night he saved her, it was merely an act, an endeavor to elevate his own sense of nobility. Upon their subsequent encounter, she refrained from engaging in formalities. The location was a coffee shop adjacent to the hospital. He was queuing, perusing a small notebook. She advanced, her heart racing. "Adrian?" He turned, surprised, and then smiled. "Emily, who are you?" she inquired directly. He closed and opened his eyes rapidly. She remarked that she observed the segment. He exhaled softly, reflecting on the interviews, the philanthropic endeavors, and the dynasty. "Ah, so you have discovered that you are more than merely a physician. Are you the physician in question?" Adrian offered a subtle nod. "It is accurate. My father constructed the foundation. I was raised in hospitals and boardrooms, and you failed to mention that?" Her voice elevated. "What was the strategy?" "Exhibit charm and humility to encourage the traumatized girl to confide in you." His expression remained unchanged. He remained composed. He replied succinctly, "No. I refrained from disclosing that aspect of my life as I did not wish for it to be your initial impression." Emily folded her arms, her defenses re-establishing. "Which aspect is authentic? The physician who assisted me in the alley, or the one who dines with senators?" Adrian gazed at her for an extended duration before indicating the adjacent park bench. "May we take a seat?" She exhibited reluctance yet proceeded. Upon taking his seat, he articulated his words with caution. "Emily, I was raised with abundant opportunities afforded to me. However, I was raised by parents who scarcely acknowledged one another. A mother who donated to charity but never attended my recital. A parent who instructed me in negotiation prior to teaching me to ride a bicycle." He gazed at his hands. "I selected medicine as it was the sole domain where I felt valuable, anchored, and authentic. Upon commencing my work in women's health, I observed the profound agony and shame that numerous women endure in silence. I sought to engage in an endeavor of significance." He faced her. "I have never feigned to be someone I am not. I refrained from using my last name to avoid creating a barrier between us." Emily scrutinized his visage. There was an absence of hubris, no refined public relations discourse, only authenticity. She averted her gaze, her tone subdued. "I find it difficult to trust individuals such as yourself." Individuals possessing everything, Adrian provided a subtle smile. "I lack some possessions. Far from it. However, I am endeavoring to live with integrity. If that frightens you, I comprehend." A quiet existed between them. Neither cool nor warm, but reflective. She then inquired, even more softly. "Why me?" He inquired without hesitation. "You fail to recognize my worth. You perceive me superficially. You provoke me. On the night I witnessed you flee from that examination room, I perceived an individual more courageous than the majority I have encountered throughout my life." Emily averted her gaze, feeling inundated. Perhaps it was not merely a matter of finances. Perhaps it pertained to the manner in which he made her feel acknowledged, secure, and never abandoned. She nodded slowly, and for the first time, she permitted herself to entertain the possibility that Adrian could be. The wind had begun to warm, signaling the arrival of spring. However, Emily derived no solace from this seasonal shift. The pain had resurfaced, more intense, acute, and relentless than prior. For weeks, she had disregarded it, relying on over-the-counter medications, immersing herself in literature, and convincing herself it would subside. However, she possessed an intrinsic understanding of the situation. The diagnosis was unequivocal. In the absence of surgical intervention, her condition was likely to deteriorate. Fear had rendered her immobile. The prospect of being unconscious and defenseless under another's care paralyzed her. Now, she found herself outside West Medical's private hospital, gazing at the glass facade as her heart raced within her chest. Her fingers gripped the strap of her purse. Then, exhaling a breath she was unaware of holding, she entered. The receptionist welcomed her warmly. "How may I assist you?" "I would like to meet with Dr. Adrian West," she stated. The woman inclined her head. "Do you possess a scheduled appointment?" Emily responded in the negative. "However, he is familiar with me. Kindly inform him that it is Emily Harper." Fewer than 10 minutes later, Adrian emerged in the corridor, his countenance transitioning from astonishment to apprehension. "Emily," he spoke softly. "What is the issue?" "I require the surgery," she replied without hesitation. "And I want you to do it." Adrian blinked, evidently surprised. "Are you certain?" She acquiesced. "I have contemplated it. I have attempted to evade it, yet I recognize its necessity. And I trust you." He gazed at her with a blend of admiration and subdued reverence. "You have no concept of how significant that is." The days preceding the procedure were an unusual amalgamation of apprehension and tranquility. Emily had her anxieties, however they no longer dominated her. Adrian meticulously guided her through each step of the process, demonstrating thoroughness, patience, and an unhurried demeanor. He provided her with space when necessary and offered reassurance during moments of uncertainty. He regarded her not as a mere case, but as an individual. The evening prior to the surgery, he visited her in the hospital room designated for her stay. She was already in bed, clad in a hospital gown, with an 4 in her arm, gazing out the window. "I won't inquire if you're anxious," Adrian said gently. "I am," she confessed, "but less than I anticipated." He positioned himself beside her. "Would you like me to explain it once more?" "No." She faced him, her eyes glistening yet resolute. "I merely want you to understand something." He remained silent, awaiting her words. "I am not easily trusting and refrain from allowing others to get close. I have spent a significant portion of my life behind a barrier due to what was taken from me." Adrian's jaw clenched, yet he remained mute. Emily took a deep breath. "However, you did not impose or coerce. You exhibited patience and attentiveness. In the process, without intention, you acquired something I believed was irretrievably lost." Her voice quivered. "I harbor distrust towards physicians. I harbor distrust towards men. At times, I even distrust myself, yet I place my trust in you." Adrian struggled to suppress her emotions. He tenderly covered her hand with his. "I shall not disappoint you," he declared, his voice laden with earnestness. The following morning, the surgical team commenced preparations early. Adrian donned his scrubs, his mind more acute than ever. He had executed this treatment numerous times, yet this occasion felt distinct. The patient on the table was not only a name on a file, she was Emily, the lady who had recoiled at his touch, who had fled from his office, who had ample reason to fear him, and yet returned. He was determined to safeguard the trust with utmost diligence. The procedure commenced. Each maneuver was methodical, every incision exact. He communicated with his team in a composed manner, his gaze fixed on the task. Hours elapsed, yet he remained oblivious to time, solely attuned to the steady cadence of concentration and precision. Upon completion, he discarded his gloves and exhaled. It proceeded flawlessly, he informed the nurses. However, he did not depart immediately. He remained by her recovery bed, observing the gentle rise and fall of her chest. She appeared pale, delicate, yet serene. She had survived, as had he. Hours later, Emily awakened, disoriented and in pain, but alive. Adrian was present, seated in the chair beside her bed, half asleep with a book resting in his lap. She stirred slightly. His eyes opened immediately. "Hey," he whispered, smiling softly. "Welcome back." She blinked, her voice hoarse. "Did it succeed?" "Everything transpired flawlessly," he stated. "You will be perfectly all right." Tears cascaded down her cheeks, not from anguish, but from profound relief. "I accomplished it," she murmured. He concurred, gently sweeping a lock of hair from her forehead. "You exhibited remarkable courage." She shut her eyes, allowing his words to envelop her. In the tranquil room permeated with the aroma of antiseptic and optimism, Emily sensed a transformation within her. The fear persisted, yet it no longer held dominion. For the first time in years, she was not merely enduring, she was recuperating. The days following Emily's surgery unfolded in a blur of recuperation and tranquility. Adrian frequented her bedside, not in a professional capacity, but as a genuine companion. He brought her preferred tea, sat alongside her during her reading, and listened without the compulsion to resolve any issues. Their dialogues deepened and became increasingly effortless. An unarticulated tenderness existed between them, delicate yet comforting. Emily was recuperating, both physically and emotionally. For the first time in an extended period, she felt whole. However, the external world was less benevolent. One afternoon following her final examination, Emily remained in the waiting area while Adrian completed the paperwork. She ambled down the corridor to extend her legs, proceeding leisurely past a cluster of nurses conversing near the break room. They failed to see her. "She remains present," one of them remarked in a tone intended to appear nonchalant yet incisive. "Are you referring to the girl upon whom Drive West performed surgery?" Another individual replied, affirming that she has been present frequently of late. "Indeed, she has," the first nurse scoffed. "If I were a patient devoid of financial resources and social standing, I would also associate with a wealthy physician." They all chuckled. "She is merely a troubled girl who experienced fortune. She does not align with his preferences." "Not in the slightest." Emily halted abruptly. Her stomach churned. Their remarks pierced her, sharp and minute, yet directed precisely at her most sensitive point. She retreated gradually, her heart pounding. The remainder of the conversation eluded her. It was unnecessary. That night, she remained awake, seated at her kitchen table with a cup of untouched tea, fixated on the words inscribed on a plain sheet of paper. "I am grateful for everything. However, I believe it is time for me to depart. You merit someone complete, someone resilient, not an individual you must repair. Do not seek me." She positioned the letter on the windowsill, anticipating that Adrian would discover it during his next visit. Subsequently, she assembled a compact suitcase and discreetly departed into the night. Adrian returned to her flat the following morning with 2 coffees and a book he believed she would love. He rapped. No response. He utilized the key she had previously and hesitantly bestowed upon him and entered. The silence was profound, excessively so. Subsequently, he observed the note. His heart plummeted at reading the lines, their significance penetrating more profoundly than anticipated. She has departed. He contacted her. No response. He contacted the bookstore for which she had requested time off. Fear ascended his spine. He explored every location he could conceive. Parks, cafes, and the tranquil nook of the bookstore where she frequently sat and read in alone. However, she was absent till late that evening. He recalled the location where everything had transformed. The little park adjacent to the pond, where he assisted the elderly woman months prior. The location where Emily initially encountered him, not in his capacity as a physician, nor as an unfamiliar individual, but as a fellow human being. He journeyed there with a solemn supplication and located her. She sat on the bench near the water, knees drawn to her chest, eyes puffy from weeping. She remained stationary and did not raise her gaze as he drew near. He remained alongside her in quiet for an extended period, allowing the wind to articulate first. He then remarked gently, "You did not even afford me an opportunity to advocate for you." Emily cleansed her cheek with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. "You need not." He faced her, his tone resolute yet imbued with emotion. Why do you persist in believing that your suffering diminishes your worth? Because it does, she said. I am the girl with scars. I possess emotional baggage, fear, and trust concerns. And you? Your name is Adrian West. His stare remained steadfast. I desire no simplicity. He expressed a desire for authenticity. And you? You are the most courageous individual I have ever encountered. Emily declined with a shake of her head. You are unaware of their discourse. The nurses and staff at your hospital saw me merely as a destitute individual dependent on a wealthy man. He extended his hand, grasping hers. I am indifferent to their opinions. I value your opinion. Currently, I perceive a voice that has been conditioned to question its own worth. He grasped her fingers delicately. However, I perceive you. Each one of you. I select you repeatedly. Her eyes brimmed with tears. Perfection is not a prerequisite. Healing is not a must. Simply be yourself. That is all I have ever desired. Her lips quivered. She muttered, I was exceedingly fearful. He stated that he was as well. Until I encountered you. She inclined toward him, and he embraced her tightly, encircling her with his arms as a protective barrier. In that instant, the clamor of the world diminished. When truth prevails over doubt, love asserts itself. The modest storefront occupied a corner of a tranquil street, situated between a florist and a coffee shop. A hand-painted sign was affixed above the entrance, proclaiming, Heal her soul, book spruce. The windows showcased inviting armchairs, gentle illumination, and meticulously arranged shelves brimming with books selected not for profit, but for significance. Within, laughter and the scent of freshly brewed coffee intertwined with the rustle of turning pages. Emily stood behind the counter, her smile serene, her demeanor tranquil, a tranquility born from enduring adversity and opting to persevere. It had been a year since her surgery, a year since her departure, and a year since her return, during which she discovered not only Adrian awaiting her, but also a semblance of herself she had nearly despaired of rediscovering. Heal Her Soul was not merely a bookstore, it was a sanctuary for women to exhale, engage with literature, and find solace. Every corner was purposefully curated. A shelf dedicated to trauma recovery, a reading alcove by the window dubbed the Brave Spot, and a wall adorned with sticky notes where patrons inscribed anonymous messages of hope for others. Adrian had contributed to the renovation of the space, installing lighting, selecting flooring, and assembling the eclectic furniture she cherished. He never attempted to usurp authority, rather, he unobtrusively facilitated her aspirations. He continued his employment at the hospital, donning the white coat when necessary. However, in the domestic sphere with her, he was simply Adrian, neither the heir nor the philanthropist, but a man who cherished literature nearly as much as he adored the woman who operated the bookstore. Following their reunion, they maintained simplicity, without of pressure or deadlines. However, when Adrian made his proposal, he included a little note concealed within a first edition of Jane Eyre, which stated, "You are no bird and I am no net. Let us soar together." Thus, they did. The nuptials took place on a serene expanse of beach as the sun commenced its descent beyond the horizon. Absent were the paparazzi and headlines, only the sound of waves and a circle of devoted individuals surrounded them. Emily donned a delicate, flowing gown, her bare feet sinking into the warm sand. Beneath a wooden arch adorned with wildflowers, Adrian awaited her, a lopsided grin illuminating his face as she drew near. They exchanged handwritten vows, imbued with sincere promises that were unembellished yet profoundly genuine. "I will not fix you," Adrian declared, "for you are never broken." "I will not fear love any longer," Emily murmured, "because you demonstrated that love can be secure." As the ceremony concluded and the initial stars emerged, they stood hand in hand at the shoreline, momentarily silent, while others danced in the background. The air lifted Emily's veil, and she turned to Adrian with tears of joy in her eyes. She reached up and kissed his cheek. "Do you recall the first time you touched me?" she inquired, her voice gentle as a breeze. He assented gradually. "I do. I believed I would never experience safety again," she remarked, a subtle grin gracing her lips. However, the day you touched me, not as a physician or a man seeking validation, but with pure honesty and compassion. She leaned in, her forehead against his. That was the day I comprehended that I need not fear the world any longer. Adrian embraced her, and I understood, he whispered, that love does not stem from saving someone. It originates from their proximity to one another. Throughout their journey, they remained in silence, intertwined. In the ensuing weeks and months, their shared existence evolved into gentle, exquisite narratives characterized by tranquil mornings, communal meals, nocturnal discussions regarding literature and aspirations, and laughter that mended wounds beyond the reach of medicine. Emily occasionally experienced moments of triggers and shadows, yet she now possessed the illumination to confront them. As for Adrian, he no longer questioned whether his legacy would define him. Each time he entered to mend her spirit, he recognized the singular legacy of significance, a life intertwined, founded not on perfection, but on love, choice, and understated bravery. Ultimately, the focus was not on salvation, but on the decision to coexist. If Emily's Odyssey resonated with you, reflecting aspects of your own fears, resilience, or recovery, understand that you are not isolated. This narrative serves as a poignant reminder that even the most profound injuries can be healed through patience, empathy, and affection. Occasionally, the most unforeseen individuals enter our lives not to save us, but to affirm our inherent value. If this narrative resonated with you, please contemplate subscribing to Soul-Stirring Stories, where each account is designed to heal, inspire, and resonate with the soul. Subscribe now and become part of our expanding community of individuals who continue to believe in love, hope, and second opportunities. Until we meet again, remain kind, courageous, and continue to have faith in the potency of narratives. Music.